Hey guys, thanks for joining me back here on KBDECORCRAFTS, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel where I create high-end looking decor using inexpensive items. For today's video, I created a few Christmas DIYs going more for that boho / modern farmhouse minimalistic look, and I hope you all like these. I'm really looking forward to creating some more Christmas DIYs, so stay tuned for those, and stay tuned to the end of this video to check out a giveaway I am hosting for reaching 20K subscribers. Okay, let's get started. For our first DIY, you'll need some yarn, which I got from Dollar Tree, and I also just have a piece of cardboard and some scissors, and we're going to create a tassel. This piece of cardboard is about 4 inches long, but it doesn't have to be. It's just in your preference on how long you want the tassel to be. So I wrapped the yarn around the cardboard about 20 times. Then I cut out a piece of yarn and removed the tassel part off the piece of cardboard. You want to make sure to hold on to the top part of the tassel, and then right down the center, go ahead and cut. Then place right on top of the piece of yarn, and in the center you're going to tie a double knot very tightly. Then fold over both sides of the tassel and smooth down, and then grabbing another piece of yarn, we're going to go ahead and tie off the top part of the tassel. So place down on the yarn and then go ahead and tie another double knot. Then taking those two ends, we're going to wrap around the tassel 2 or 3 times, and then tucking in the rest of that yarn into the back. Then smoothing down the rest of the tassel, go ahead and trim off your ends. So now you have a cute little tassel, and then I went ahead and made about 15 of these. I also did go back and trim them down to be about 3.5 inches long. So I found this blank sign from the Target dollar spot, and this one was actually $5. This was from last season, but you can find them for every season just in different colors. But this is what I'll be using for my project today. So you can achieve the same type of look using one of these boards. They also have them in like a beware, and they also have one for Christmas. They have one for every season. So you can use this and these paint stir sticks for a border. Now this isn't going to be as wide as this. This measures out to be approximately like 9 inches wide. So obviously this is not going to measure out to be the same. This only comes out to just shy of 6 inches. So you could just get 2 of these and add another, glue another section here, and then adhere it to the back with some popsicle sticks. Then using this contact paper from Dollar Tree, I would then press it in, making sure that you get the grooves inside here. Just pressing that in and then framing it out with these sticks that I get at Walmart for a pack of 3 for less than $1. This all ends up coming out to pretty much the same amount of the $5 as the other sign, but this is another option that you can have if you can't find the other sign that I have. Now to begin gluing everything down, I'm going to be using the end of a branch that I have for my macrame projects, or you could use a stick as well. This is how I saw it on Pinterest, where I got my inspiration from, but I'm going to be using the end of one of these branches. And I'm also going to hot glue it down and use some wood glue to make sure it's not going to move. Now I'm going to begin from the bottom of the tree and go up. So I'm going to start with 5 of my tassels and lay them down to see where I'd like them to lay, and then go ahead by gluing the middle one first. I found that it was easiest to just glue the tassel and then lay it down on the piece of wood, but make sure to center that right above the stem or stick that you decide to use and hold that down in place. As you glue down each tassel, you want to make sure that they're going to be kind of facing inward to create more of that flared out look as they each lay down. And also I made sure that these were going to be laying on top of the stem that's on the bottom. And once you're finished with the bottom section, you're going to continue the pattern and just go from 4, 3, 2, and then 1 for the top, and make sure that each section is also overlapping just slightly the tassels that are on the bottom. Once I was done gluing everything down, I noticed there were some areas that I needed to trim down, but I just trimmed enough that it was going to still be overlapping, but not too much. And I just wanted to show you guys this really cute desk vacuum that I found on Amazon. This works out perfect to pick up any little messes that are all over your workspace. I'll have a link down in the description box for you guys. But yeah, this is really cool to have on hand. Now back to the DIY, I felt like this needed a topper, so I grabbed one of the wooden stickers from Dollar Tree, and instead of using the glitter side, I just stained the back of the side that was plain and placed that on top. And that completes this DIY. This little tree turned out so cute, and I really love it for my decor this year. Now moving on to DIY number 2, I'm going to be using this yarn that I got from Amazon, as well as another piece of cardboard and some scissors. The piece of cardboard I'm using measures out to be about 3.5 inches long, and I'm going to go ahead and make some more tassels for this project. This idea I got off of Pinterest as well. I'm going to leave down the blog post of where I got this idea from exactly, but I took her initial steps and kind of created my own. I did wrap this around I think about 20 times rather than the 10 that she did in her blog post. But we're going to be creating 3 sets of tassels for each tree that we're going to be making. So just taking the same steps as before, tying that piece of yarn in the middle as tightly as possible, and then folding it over to create your tassel. Then with another piece of yarn, we're going to go ahead and tie that around the top portion of the tassel as tightly as possible. Then go ahead and cut down the ends to make sure they're nice and even. Then once you have 3 of them done, go ahead and find which one you'd like for the center of your tree. Then flip it upside down and then find the center of the tassel underneath. Go ahead and place a dab of hot glue, and then using another tassel at the top of the tassel, place that right where this glue is. Hold that in place for a few seconds and then go ahead and smooth down the ends of the tassel that's on top. Next, we're going to do the exact same thing, just using the tassel that's going to be on top and then placing the rest of the tree underneath where the glue goes. Now, I've seen other people weave these through one another with like a needle, which you could do as well, but I just chose to use the glue and I feel like it holds just as good. And then you'll have a cute little tassel Christmas tree. Now I'm going to use one of these needles that I got from Amazon, which I'll have down below if you choose to use this. It's just so that way I can pull out 2 of the ends on the very top of the tassel to be able to attach it to our jute string. You're going to want to pull out one end from the back and from the front. So now you could just stop here, but I wanted to add kind of like a tree topper to these trees. So I got these wooden beads from Michael's, and I'm using the plain colored wooden bead, and then using that needle from earlier, I'm going to go ahead and poke the yarn through just to be able to put it through the bead easier. You could also just put some tape around the ends to be able to poke through the hole of the bead. So there you have your finished Christmas tree. So I made about 7 of these, but you can make as many as you'd like to fit your garland. So I found this pack of wooden beads from Amazon, and what I liked about this is that it came with 3 different sizes as well as some jute string, so that way I could create this entire project. And it's very inexpensive, and I'll leave the link down below if you'd like to choose this one as well. And for this I'm going to use the 2 smaller sizes. I'm going to use the needle from earlier to poke the jute string through, or you could use some tape to be able to get the beads on easily. You can choose whatever pattern you'd like. I'm going to go ahead with the medium, small, and then medium again. And I'm going to be using 3 at a time in between each tree. Now I didn't exactly measure out my jute string, but I believe it was about 5 or 6 feet long. And to make sure that my tassels were going to be somewhat cohesive, I wanted to make sure that I was going to have them in between having the spaces of 6 inches long. So I have 3 beads on each side, and then right in the center I was going to tie on the tassel. And I just double knotted the yarn and then cut off the ends. And then just go ahead and repeat the pattern as many times as you'd like. And once I was all done, I made sure that everything was nice and even and just created 2 little loops on the ends to be able to hang up. And I am no expert at tying knots. I just sometimes start tying them and I don't even remember how I did it, but this is what I did for my little hoop at the end, and then I just cut off the excess string. And this is how the tree garland looks hanging up. I really love how this turned out. So for this next DIY, if you didn't know how to create the sign that I was explaining from earlier, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create another framed wooden sign. I'm going to use one of these Dollar Tree signs that they carry every year and every season. They're the long ones that look like it's like a faux shiplap look. I'm going to be using the color plaster and the Waverly chalk paint to cover the sign completely. Using my paintbrush, I also went into the grooves of the faux shiplap to be able to really see that stand out better. With the paintbrush, I just go all the way down the line to take out any of that excess paint. Now I should have waited for this to dry, but I didn't. But I'm just going to take some of the wax antique paint from Art Minds and kind of give this a little bit more dimension by taking an old brush, dabbing off the excess, and just painting all around the sign. Now you can add as little or as much as you'd like. It just depends on how weathered down you want the sign to look. Then taking the large paint stir sticks that I showed earlier, I'm going to frame this out and measure down where I need to cut off. So I'm going to measure down right where that bend sort of starts, and that's where I'm going to cut off, and that's the perfect length for this sign. And you could use any type of saw for this. I'm just going to use my hand saw to cut this down. And make sure to sand it down to smooth out any rough edges. I then just use that piece to measure out on the other stir stick to be able to cut down the same length. Now I lined up the pieces on the sign to see exactly where I needed to cut the smaller ends off, and then I was able to cut 2 sides off of just 1 stir stick. I also glued everything down with some Gorilla Wood glue, and I used these clamps from Dollar Tree. So I started by gluing down the top and the bottom section first, making sure they were about 1 inch inward into the sign, then using some of that wood glue to place down on the edges of the sign to put the wood piece down, and then the clamps. You also want to use the end pieces to make sure that these are going to be glued down nice and straight. Also remember to wipe off any excess glue because it will show when it dries up. Then once those are thoroughly dry, go ahead and glue on the end pieces. You have to note that if you do want to change the color of your frame, definitely stain or paint them before gluing them down. And then you'll have a perfect frame sign for any project. I'm going to be using the cork sheet from the Crafter Square section from Dollar Tree to add on to this frame piece. I'm going to go ahead and measure out where I need to cut to fit exactly in the center of the sign. So I made my markings and then just cut it out with some scissors. I love that this fit perfectly in the center of this sign. Now just remember to make sure that it's nice and straight before removing the backing and sticking it down, because this does stick really good. The last thing you want to do is try to peel it back up and then peel off the paint. Now you could use any stencil or any stickers or a Cricut if you have, but I'm using the stencil that I found at Dollar Tree because I really like the font of these letters, and I'm going to cut out the letters and write out the word Merry Christmas, or words rather, and this just makes it easier for when I go to paint them on. Now, when stenciling anything on, you want to make sure that you're going to use something to straighten it out, like a ruler or some painter's tape. So I went ahead and just used my ruler to measure things out so that way it wouldn't be slanted when I was done. But I'm just using a paintbrush to paint in the letters, and then once I remove the stencil, I'm going to fill in those spare spaces. I also forgot to mention that I'm just using the color ink in the Waverly chalk paint. And I'm just using a very fine, thin brush to be able to fill those spaces in. Then just go ahead with each letter and fill those in. Now, my inspiration for this piece was a sign that I saw at Walmart, but I haven't been able to find in person. It is very similar to this, but not exactly the same. But I have not been able to find it at all, so I thought I'd recreate it in a sense, but give it my own twist. And this is my version of it, but I also, which you'll see later on, ended up changing the frame several times. Once my letters were completely dry, I used these thumbtacks that I got from Dollar Tree, and I wanted to place one in each corner of this sign. I then cut these down as low as I could with my wire cutters, but be very careful because this will like shoot out and I actually couldn't find the backings of some of them, so be very careful when doing this. But I just trimmed down the backings since I knew there wasn't going to be much room to be able to push into the cork paper, but go ahead and do that. And then I used the same ink, chalk paint, and painted them and waited for them to dry. So I placed them down in each corner so that way I knew exactly where the hole would be, and then I went back in with some hot glue to make sure that they wouldn't go anywhere. So I initially liked the look of the plain wood for the frame, but I went back in and stained it and I didn't like it, so then I ended up covering it up with just some black chalk paint, and that's how it stayed. But I really like how this ended up fitting in with my decor. So for the last DIY, I have seen several different versions of this triangle Christmas tree that people have been creating, and I wanted to show you guys my version. So I started by removing the backings of this and removing every single piece of paper, just using a sanding block to help me get all of that off. Also, these triangle signs are from the Dollar Tree. Then taking some of that wax antique paint, I'm going to paint these entirely, just painting on some of the wax and then removing any of the excess with a paper towel. And make sure to get all of the edges and all the parts on the inside too. And once they are dry, go ahead and align them and see where you would like to cut and then mark them off. I just placed one on top of each other and with a pencil made a marking, and then using my handsaw went ahead and cut off the bottoms. Now you're only going to need to do this to 2 of the triangles. The top triangle is just going to be left alone. And just for my personal preference, I left the middle body triangle a little thicker than the bottom part, if that makes sense. But once cutting them down, I used my sanding block to smooth out the edges. And I wanted to make sure that this was going to stick really good and not break off just like it would with some hot glue. So I'm using some wood glue to adhere these to each other. So I then went ahead and just put the top piece right onto that piece that we cut out, held it in place for a few seconds, and then attached the bottom part. I tried to hold on to these for a few seconds to adhere, and then I left this alone for several hours. Now going back to the beads that we used earlier, I wanted to add a more boho touch to this piece. So I'm going to be using all 3 sizes and creating a pattern on a piece of jute string that I'm then going to glue onto my tree. I used the biggest bead for the bottom of this, and then a medium, a small, and another medium, and then I went back in and added 2 more, which was another medium and another small. Once you have the arrangement that you like, I then cut off the jute string and then tied, I think I tied 3 knots to be able to make sure that the beads weren't going to come down. Then right at the end of the knot, go ahead and cut off the rest of the jute string. So I knew that I wanted to glue this right at the point of the triangle, so I made another little knot on top, right where I was going to glue right at the tip of the triangle. I put some hot glue right at the center of the point of the triangle, and then grabbing the knot that I made on the jute string, I put that right in place of the glue and then just held it till it adhered. And then make sure to cut off the excess jute string. And then you're all done. I did also add a little bit of that plaster paint to give it a little more distressed look, but I love how this turned out and it looks great with my decor. I am very into the more minimal boho / modern farmhouse look this year for Christmas. I just love how these pieces look together, and I can't wait to continue to decorate for Christmas. I'm going to be working on some ornaments next, and I can't wait to share those with you guys. Don't forget to stay tuned to the end of this video to check out a giveaway that I will be hosting for helping me reach 20,000 subscribers on this channel. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. I recently just hit a full year being on YouTube, and I never would have ever imagined that I'd come this far on this channel, but I'm so grateful for you guys, and I love to make these DIYs for you all. Don't forget to check down below for the details of my giveaway and how to enter, and one lucky winner will receive this macrame collection that I put together and handmade myself. And if you didn't know already, I have an Etsy shop open where I make custom handmade macrame pieces, and I wanted to give back to you guys and give you a chance to win some of the really neat pieces that I made this season. So if you want a chance to win, make sure to follow the steps in the link down below and then leave a comment letting me know that you did. I also have a link down below for my Etsy shop in case you're interested in placing an order. And again, I am so thankful for you all, and I can't wait to share more of my DIYs with you. Good luck, and I'll see you in my next one.